Hello Thistledown Gang, welcome back to my channel if you've already been here, if not, hello! It's lovely to have you here, I hope you're comfortable, please stay, and by that I mean subscribe. You might remember that I showed you how to rebind aesthetically questionable books a few videos ago. But what if it's an ebook? Maybe I want to take my e-reader to LARP. Okay, I mean it's unlikely because I have bad bodice rippers, or a somewhat historical event, or I wanted nearby to look stuff up on one of these events, or I just wanted to be pretty and sort of protected in everyday life and I don't like the things I find for sale. Liz of Liscapism has recently made a book clutch to hide hers, and I'm here to offer you my take on the same theme. I will link her video down in the description and also in the corner if that works, not sure, because it is a good video and she has a lot of intelligent things to say on the whole reading somewhere. This is kind of half a tutorial and half me just trying stuff by myself, but it worked out and I'll tell you what you need for the project nevertheless. You'll need an e-reader of your choice or possession, a hardcover book that isn't needed anymore and that's about the same size as your reader, slightly bigger, some pretty extra paper, an assortment of aesthetically pleasing elastic and ribbons, a craft knife, a pencil, craft glue and a brush and some water to adjust the consistency of your glue, all-purpose glue that I forgot to put in this arrangement, and paint of your choosing. I'd recommend some white or gold to be involved, but you know, you do you. Oh, also a ruler, preferably metal, but you know, just take what's around. And thick cardboard, which I totally forgot in this display, which is kind of embarrassing because it's one of the most important parts. And I mean the thick stuff from the back of watercolor pads. That's exactly right, that's what I used. But if you don't have that, any thicker cardboard will do. Just maybe not the wavy packaging stuff, because that shows on the side and it looks weird. But you could cover it in paper though, and then it would work. Or I guess you could also take craft foam, but I don't have a lot of experience with that, so I can't say a lot about it. And you would need something else than craft glue and just use all-purpose glue all the time. But I digress. My book used to be an agenda from paper blanks. They are always too pretty and too costly to just throw them out after the year's over, and for once I'm really glad about my paper hoarding tendencies. I had already removed the block for less occupation of storage space, but if you struggle with cutting that out, have a look at my first book DIY video where I show you how to do that. I also tell you how I source my DIY material books in that video, and I'm pretty proud of it. I like it. It's a good video. Go watch it. The size of that planner is perfect for my reader though, and if you can't find something the right size, planners might be your friend. We start by covering up the spine. This is not a direly necessary step, but it makes things a bit neater. Measure the width of your spine, add 1 centimeter or so, and you're good. Adjust your craft glue to be easily spreadable with a brush, but still sticky. This bottle was almost empty, so I didn't bother with using a bowl for mixing. Today we go for shaken, not stirred. Brush the glue on from the middle of your paper outward like a sunburst, and then take it over to your spine. I couldn't find my folding bone, but you can use the top of your thumbnail to get the paper to stick smoothly to the curves of the spine, so the opening of the book won't be impacted. It is important that you can still move your book covers the same way it was without that paper in the middle. You could also use fabric, maybe with a top layer of Mod Podge or something, because the glue will seep through, probably, and that way you can pretend it was on purpose. I trimmed the short sides of my paper slip after gluing it because I don't really trust myself with measurements. Onto the thick cardboard. I measured my book cover and cut a strip as long as the short side and 0.5 centimeter wide. Adjust for your width of book cover, but 0.5 centimeter is a decent minimum and everything else might be a bit unstable. And then use this strip as a template for the others. I needed 6 strips, 3 for the top and bottom each, and your mileage may vary depending on the thickness of your cardstock. Just make sure in the end you have a cardboard stack as high as your reader is thick or slightly higher. And if your book cover has a spine that is significantly thicker than your reader, you might want to add another layer or two of cardboard to the back cover, so where the back of your reader will sit, just to prop it up a bit. I glued the two sets together with my thin craft glue, clamped them up and left them to dry. I cut another set of 1/2 centimeter strips the length of my book cover, same procedure, glue, clamp, dry. I trimmed the long strips to fit in between my short ones because, again, I don't trust my measurement skills and this way also works. And then I sanded my strip stacks to smooth them out a bit. But don't worry if they aren't exactly the same width, because that's actually not a bug, that's a feature. I painted the future outsides ivory with acrylics to mimic book pages, and this is where the feature of the strips not being perfectly level kicks in because it looks more page-ish. I mean, yes, modern books will be pressed together with over a ton of force and then cut in a straight line, and they are very level on the outside, but this slightly uneven edge works a bit better. It's a bit cartoonish, but it looks very page-ish, and the layers of the cardboard have the advantage that they actually look a bit like pages too. And by sanding, you smoosh them away from each other. You kind of spread them, and that makes the effect even more plastic. You might opt for a college foredge, or maybe even a painted one if you're super fancy, but I stuck with something in the white spectrum. I think gold could be cool too. The blue for the top and inside of my stacks is chalk paint I had left over from painting our fridge, and it matched the color of my covers pretty perfectly, and I really like the finish of chalk paint. It just feels so nice. I wanted to be able to turn the reader on and off without the hassle of taking it out of the sleeve every time, so I marked where the button sits and removed the top 2 layers of cardboard. I'm okay with having to take it out for charging because it happens so rarely, but if you aren't, there's always the option of cutting a gap for that too, and I could still do that too if it turns out that it annoys me too much to plop the reader out there all the time. Before we assemble the paper parts, we need elastic to keep the reader in there. I had this fairly thin, satiny elastic in the right color around. It matches the aesthetic and color, and it being thin makes it easier to glue down, especially in the part where it goes under the cardboard. So that's a thing you might actually want to consider. The options are 4 diagonal bits of elastic over the corners of the reader, or 2 wide strips horizontally across the top and bottom. I went for the latter. Less weak spots that I might have to fix someday, and less work now. Also, no angles to fuck up, because I'd be very cross with myself every time I opened the thing if I angled only one of the corners differently, and that might just so happen because, measurements. So horizontally it is. I cut my elastic to the width of my reader. It doesn't have to be stretched a lot, just a tiny bit, plus some extra space to glue it down, and then marked where it would have to sit so it didn't annoy me during reading, but still did its job. I'm using a slightly elastic all-purpose glue. I wouldn't use hot glue here. A. There are not a lot of cases where I don't see another kind of glue as more suited for a task than hot glue. B. Hot glue is not elastic at all and sets super quickly, and you don't have the time to adjust things. And C. Hot glue bulks, which is annoying, especially when you have to put something else on top later. This stuff here works really well. I glued bigger parts down on the inner edge because that part will not be covered later, and you could still cover it and put some pretty paper or fabric over it, but I was okay with how it looked, and only a narrow line on the outside where the cardboard will sit. Let that dry for a few hours, and we're off to the final assembly. Again, I glued the cardboard down with my thin craft glue and secured it with clothespins all around. I feel like people absolutely underestimate the power of cardboard and white glue together. You can basically make wood out of that stuff again. It's super stable and dense, and I really like it, and I might come off as a bit weird here. Now, thanks to me not being super meticulous with my measurements, I have a bit of a gap between the cardboard stacks. I used this wood filler stuff that I had around to patch it up, but grey stuff or air dry clay or even hot glue might work as well. The wood filler is quite easily paintable though and doesn't break quickly, so that is a great option. If you have it, use it. It's great for a lot of things. Now this already looks like a book, and we could stop here, but I lug my reader around a lot, and I don't want the book to open all the time when I relentlessly try to shove it into a full backpack. That's where the assortment of ribbons and elastic comes in. Measure length of ribbon equal to your book's spine and then some. I cut mine with a forked end and flamed it to make the plastic fiber melt to prevent fraying. I then glued mine down right next to the spine on the front cover using the same all-purpose glue as before. Just make sure you don't use something that seeps through the ribbon. I mean, you do what you want, but I think it doesn't look good. Sew or glue if that's how you roll, just don't trust glue when I can use another technique. Your ends together, just make sure you have about 2 fingers width of ribbon left on the lower edge of the book. Now we have a loop. Neat. Now the only thing we still need is an elastic to keep the thing closed. I had this velvet elastic that fit the colors of my cover, but you could also use the same you used on the inside, or something contrasting, or something satiny would surely look nice too. Measure your length so you have a bit of an overlap. I wanted to continue the angled theme from the first ribbon and cut mine in an arrow shape. Then slip it under your ribbon loop, because that's what it's here for, and sew it shut. I also added some glue to make it gape less and added a button for extra fanciness. I really like these buttons. I found them over a decade ago in some shop I barely remember. They were a dead stock sale and I don't think I'll ever find them again, so I used them very sparingly and mostly for decoration. And that's it. Instead of the whole ribbon elastic ordeal, you could also add buckles or glue a satin ribbon on the inside and cover it up to tie your book shut. And I think that would look lovely, or a bow of satiny elastic sewn onto the actual book elastic thing where, in my case, the button sits. I might have to try some of that someday. I still have a phone and a tablet and they could use that treatment too, so might as well do that. I'm super happy with the outcome. I made this project up as I went for the most part, and it makes me smile every time I see it, and that's the best kind of project. Overall, it took about 2 hours if you don't count waiting times, which is a decent work to outcome ratio in my book, and now that I know how to do it, it might actually be less. The most time-consuming part was actually cutting the strips, because that just takes some time. The stuff is thick, okay? I hope some of you can use this tutorial, and if you do, let me know and maybe leave a thumbs up, and I would love to see what you made using this, if you did, and if you know someone else who would benefit from it, please share, because that's how we grow the gang. And if you don't have need for this project, I hope you at least enjoyed the video. And with that, I shall leave you for now, and I wish you all a wonderful time until we meet again. Farewell.